What is in my tummy right now?
A baby.
A baby! I'm pregnant again.
A baby. It's a baby.
Because we got a really, really good angle for the palette, a very clear picture of the palette. And what they're saying is, at this time, they think there is absolutely nothing wrong with the whole palette.
That's great.
Yeah, it's good.
Yes, it's good.
I see in you my mother's eyes, and I lay your head to my shoulder. A lock of gold, a secret smile. I will tell you when you get older. I place a hand upon your heart. Every beat is taking me over, and I will hold you in my arms. Pretend we'll stay here forever. Time changes everything, and everything will change in time. Love changes every heart, and any heart can change you.
Do you have a special thing you want to say to baby girl number 3?
So, baby, you aren't quite here yet, but we're excited to see you and excited to meet you and learn who you're going to become. And we just wanted to say how much we love you, and we've been excited and really looking forward to getting the chance to be your mommy and daddy. So, we love you, and we'll see you soon, okay?
We have been working real hard to get you out to see you. This induction has taken a longer time than we thought, but it's all going to be worth it, and we love you so much, and every single thing we're doing here is worth it. To see you, to give you kisses, to hold you, to get to know you, and I can't wait to see you and my little one. Mama loves you. See you soon. Bye. Hi everybody. We're back. This is Rose. Her name is Rose Margaret. Obviously we've been a little busy. But we wanted to film just an update and to share her birth story before we forget. Because she is about 5 weeks old now and growing like a weed, and everything obviously turned out well in the end. It was kind of an adventure getting there though, so that's what we're gonna tell you about. As we said in the last vlog, the state of the world right now means that there is the COVID-19 virus that's happening, which means the hospital experience is a little different than other birth experiences that we've had. It was not as scary, I guess, as I was worried it might be. Everyone did require masks, especially through like the main entrances and stuff. We did not have to take a COVID test where I gave birth.
At that time.
At that time, things are changing all of the time, so that even in the hospital I delivered at might have already changed. But I did not have to take one, and nor did Dan. When we finally got to our room, they let me take my mask off. They did ask Dan to put his on anytime people came in and out.
So, as you can see, I'm wearing a mask,
I mean,
looking all fancy.
if you're gonna tell them, you should take the mask off so they can hear you.
Well, okay. All right, hold on. Here we go. I can do this because it's just me and Jenna in the room. But the rules that we have to follow right now are a little bit different than the last couple times. Jenna's having a contraction right now,
Thanks,
so
honey.
we're not going to hear much from her. But I can't leave. I used to be able to go out and get the car seat from the car after baby was born.
Or walk around the hospital for
yeah.
treatment.
So last time we would walk down to the cafeteria or to the little garden they have. And we can't do that right now because of the COVID-19 thing. So we are staying in the ward. I am not allowed to leave the ward unless I'm leaving the hospital. So I can't, I gotta stay in here just like you. And then we all leave together. So that's what we're gonna do. But we're all set, we're happy, we're getting fed, we're getting taken well care of. And the kids are taken well care of. Our regular babysitter, Morgan, is with Ava and Mabel right now, and by all sound of things, they are doing pretty well and having a lot of fun together, even though they miss us and wish that we were home. So, there's the update for right now. We'll see you guys soon.
Dan's very nice, so that means like every time like he had kind of taken his off to like have a snack or something, and then someone came in the room, he was like scrambling.
Where'd I put it?
Where'd it go? I need to have it on. So, but all in all, like once we got to our room, it felt kind of normal. Maybe a little quieter, but not bad. I was induced, so that actually took a fairly long time. In the past, I was also induced with my other two births, and I feel like my body caught on sooner. And I don't know if it was just a different kind of medicine or what, or just that every birth is a little different. But
well, and for reasons we will shortly explain, the birth probably wasn't going to progress normally.
right. So it took a while before I started to get contractions. I don't even know how many hours, at least.
It was at least 7 hours before you started.
Yeah, at least like 7 hours.
Because I think you started contractions after midnight and we got checked in at 9, so...
Well, and they had to do 2 doses of the induction medicine that they used.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe we should have our notes for this because I don't remember exact medication names.
It's okay.
But it wasn't kind of kicking into gear, basically. The pain level was okay. Eventually I did start like dilating a little bit. And as with my previous births, by the time I got to 3 or 4 centimeters and I was like ready to have an epidural, that kind of matched my pain expectation, meaning everything was kind of manageable for a long time, actually, just kind of hanging out in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to sleep some.
They gave me a cot.
They gave him a cot so he could rest. Yeah, so uncomfortable but not horrible. And then usually when my pain goes to the point where it's like I can't breathe through it and it's like starting to get really uncomfortable, that's when I'm like, hey, can you check me and see if I'm far enough where I can ask for an epidural? The not great part during that time period was the IVs. It took them like 4 times to get an IV stick in me.
Mm-hmm. You're a hard stick.
Yeah, apparently like my veins are tiny or something. But what that meant is that like I had huge bruises from the places where they were trying to do the IV. Thankfully, I'm not scared of needles. And I kind of look at it like of how my day is going to go today when I give birth. This is the least of my worries. So just breathing through it and being patient and kind of going with the flow. It wasn't my favorite, but eventually they ended up being able to put an IV in my hand, which worked fine for me. I know it's not everyone's first preference as far as where to stick an IV, but it worked, thankfully. The other thing that was different about this birth is when they would check me to see how far along I was, it was a lot more painful than some of my other pregnancies. We found out later because Rose, her head was so far up from where it should be, they were having to do a deeper check, which then just means it's a little more painful. You can try.
Okay.
Is the angle bad?
I think you look lovely.
You always say that, though.
That's because you do.
Okay.
Hi, honey. How you doing?
Tired.
Yeah, you didn't get much sleep last night.
We checked in at 9 p.m. It is now, 2 something, and
The next day.
not much has happened.
I mean, you've been moving things along as best you can.
Well, and there's enough contractions where I'm not getting a lot of sleep, but
Right.
not regular enough to get into anything.
Mm-hmm. So we're playing the wait and see game. Okay.
Yay.
Love you, honey.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye. So things took a long time. I still was not progressing. And at a certain point, we were noticing that, and it was right around a shift change actually, that every time I'd get a contraction, because I did have Pitocin at that time.
Okay.
They didn't start it till later, but eventually I had Pitocin. Every time I would contract, the baby's heart rate would drop. And really whatever position I would be put in, it wasn't helping the situation at all. And thankfully, I always look for the positives in these kind of scenarios to try to help soothe myself and stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, because it was at shift change, they were able to call the previous shift nurses to come help, because at that point I had the epidural and it had worked really well. Like I could not bend my knees, I couldn't do anything. And so it needed a team of nurses to help rotate my body from side to side to see if that took, if that took the pressure off. Like they thought maybe she was laying on the umbilical cord or something. But it took like a team of 6 people, and everyone was starting to get really worried because her heart rate kept dropping. At a certain point we had 6 or 7 people in there. They had called the OB who was there. They had called, I had the midwife there and 4 nurses, because the previous shift change, or the previous shift of nurses, had our nurse and then someone who was training.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a team of people, and at that point you start to get kind of scared. I had done over 20 hours of labor, or 19 hours of labor or something.
Yeah.
And I was still only at 4 or 5 centimeters.
Yeah, you weren't progressing the way you should have.
Yeah, and in comparison, Mabel, I was in labor for 14 hours, and Ava, I was in labor for 19 hours total. So, it was a long process. But having all those people in the room watching the monitor, it gets kind of eerie, because at a certain point they all just are quiet. They're just staring at this monitor and the chart and watching the baby's heart rate drop and just kind of hoping that she's going to come back up after each contraction. So, yeah, it was pretty scary. And at that point, you're following what is happening. You're trusting what guidance they're giving you. But it was okay, this is not good. If this doesn't improve, like, the logical thing is that we're probably looking at a C-section. And I was pretty calm through all of that. And once they had decided to do that, because, you know, at this point they had already put the monitors on Rose's head on the inside, and to really track the contractions and her heart rate, making sure we were getting accurate reads. But we were like, okay, like, finally the OB just kind of looks at us and she's like, well, this doesn't look good. It's not improving. Like, you're still not dilated all the way that you would need to be to give birth. And I don't want to put that kind of pressure on the baby or stress on the baby. Because if this is what her heart rate is doing for just regular contractions, if the contractions are coming faster and more at a higher intensity level, plus the pushing, you know, to get her out, it's just not going to be good for the baby. So, you know, take a deep breath, eyes tear up a little bit, and I had this moment where I was like, okay, I always said to myself, like, this is not my first choice, but I will do whatever it takes to get the baby out safely. I have said that to myself. I have, like, kind of, that was my MO for birth and my approach for birth. Plus, if Ava can do 3 surgeries as a 1-year-old and smile within 24, 48 hours, I can suck it up and do this. So, I don't know what you were feeling.
It's like, okay, plan, what are we on now? F?
Yeah, basically. This whole pregnancy, like, things just kept changing, so you go with it. So they removed whatever assistance I was having to have the contractions come more quickly. And so I wasn't having as many contractions, which was nice.
I think they actually slowed them down.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how they did that, actually, but it did slow down, so I was grateful. What are you doing, honey?
And that was in part because they went to go prep the OR.
Yeah.
And the the OR was getting prepped by one team while the OB was delivering the other patient
In a different room.
in a different room. Yeah.
Okay.
Same time.
So, like, it was very kind of relaxed once the decision was made. Like, they brought Dan in an outfit. He put it on, tried to tie a shoe, ripped a hole in the butt. So then needed another outfit. So we were just laughing and, like, taking deep breaths and preparing to do an experience we had never done before. And yeah, everything seems calm and okay. So we found out later that the reason she was having a hard time is because the umbilical cord was wrapped really tightly around her neck. They kind of described it like she was hanging in there almost like a puppet, where every time the muscles tried to push her down, she would get caught and couldn't lower herself into the birth canal and therefore help me dilate. So it was intense. I'm really glad that they were watching closely and that they were able to make that decision so that she wasn't in more distress and that we didn't try for a vaginal birth given that scenario. So we're all getting set to go for the C-section, and they wheel me in. They tell Dan to wait outside the door at a chair and that they were going to get me prepped and everything set and then go get Dan. So they get me on the table and, like, again, I'm holding it together okay. Like, it's intimidating. I've never had a major surgery before, and so I had no idea what to expect. It was kind of like in a movie, right, where, like, you recognize all the lights and the setup and it's like a sterile environment. They get me on the table. The anesthesiologist is by my head, and so I knew that they were putting medicine into my epidural line to, like, numb everything out, and he talked me through it. You know, and not even 2 minutes after he had administered the medicine, you know, they're still getting things prepped, and all of a sudden I hear someone say cord prolapse, and it was, everyone instantly like got into a different like emergency mode. And so I know from like just watching TV and like reality shows that cord prolapse is a really dangerous scenario. Definitely for the baby, sometimes for mom. But basically it's that the cord has come out through the birth canal, and there's pressure on it because the baby's head then is down and then blocking out, blocking oxygen to the baby, basically. We found out later that the midwife had pulled the monitors off the baby's head, and as those cords came out, it must have attached to the umbilical cord, and that's kind of how it came out. She has to basically then put her hand on the baby's head while it's inside me and hold the baby off the cord to relieve the pressure, as everyone is rushing to cut the baby out as fast as they can. So at that point I realized the situation, and I start to get really scared for the baby. And you know, not to mention this, like, there's nothing you can do in that scenario except for just stay still and pray and be scared. And at this point Dan was not in the room. So I was by myself. And you know, people are kind of talking around you. Like, no one told me what a cord prolapse was. Like, if I didn't already know what that was, I think I would have been even more confused or panicked. But like the anesthesiologist was like talking calmly to me, and at one point like the OB was nice enough to be like, go get Dad, he should be here for this. And because Dan was already all prepped, and because I already had my epidural in, and thankfully the medicine had already started, they were able to just go. That is often not what the case for cord prolapses. Like, oftentimes the spouse is not in the room because they have to completely knock the woman out because they need to cut her open, basically. And it was very hurried. Like, I could feel the pressure of people kind of digging in my insides. But Dan thankfully came in and was so calm, which I'm not trying to be surprised about it. But like, between the two of us, Dan is often the one who is freaking out, especially in medical scenarios. So like, the fact that he was able to just be very calm and like reassuring and like, it's gonna be okay. Because at that point I'm sobbing. I'm so scared. And like, I don't know what to do with myself, and like, just having him there was really helpful. Because like, tell what happened from your perspective, because you were just sitting outside the room.
Right. So they wheel you in on the gurney, and I wave goodbye, and they tell me to sit in the chair of waiting right by the double doors. And I'm looking at this nice picture of like raindrops on a leaf on the other side. There's nothing for me to do. But then coming down the hallway, running, is one of our nurses. And she is trying to like put on a mask or gloves or something, and tries to get through the doors with her badge, and is cursing because it didn't work the first time. And she's clearly like trying to get in there as fast as possible. So she finally gets it and runs in, and doors close, and I'm going, the only thing I know going on in there is my wife is having a baby. What's going on? And maybe,
were you like panicked? Were you scared? Like, because she was so urgent, right?
Starting to get nervous, but I also didn't have a point of reference. Like, was she just running late because her shoe got untied and that's what was going on?
Yeah.
Or is something happening inside? Like, it made me start to wonder if something was happening inside.
Yeah.
So like 30 seconds later, somebody else, I think it was the anesthesiologist, came out and was like, okay, come on, Dad. And he didn't indicate there was anything wrong. He was just like, come on, let's go. And,
Is that why you were so calm?
well, partly.
Because I was freaking out.
Well, and you walk in, and it's like, you ever see the Willy Wonka movie with Gene Wilder, and they're doing the video
Yeah.
like that level of lighted room is in there, and I'd seen what the setup was for a C-section before, so I knew there was this like shield, and she'd be kind of with her arms out, like all of that was kind of expected. They had the warming table for baby kind of right as I walked in.
Were they all moving really fast when you
Everyone-
got there?
Very purposefully, yes, but it didn't feel like panicked. It was just like urgent, like we're in the middle of giving birth.
Because I definitely felt like panic, because they were like throwing things up, like the sheet up, the like everyone getting everything like into place. Like it happened so fast, and for as scared as I was feeling, I was very appreciative that like everyone was just where they needed to be, and like we're just so like on top of it.
Yeah.
Because it was very scary, like, you know, like, yeah, I try not to, like, think too much about it, because, like, I don't think have felt fear like that in a while, like, because I was scared when Ava was born, but I was doing something active to help, if that makes sense. Like, I was pushing, so I had something else to focus on. This, you can't move because you're numb. Like, things are being done to you in order to get the baby out versus you actively doing something. And that's just something different psychologically, I think. Plus, like, I knew how dangerous that situation was, and I was just like, I don't want to lose the baby, like, and I don't know, like, I know they're going to cut me open, but I don't know if, like, I'm going to feel anything, or, like, and I think if it was a planned C-section, because as soon as they said cord prolapse, it went into an emergency C-section, where they just had to do it as soon as possible. But, like, I was imagining for, like, a planned C-section, or, like, even if you had been in labor before, just that, like, it was going to go up at, like, a calm pace, and that they were going to talk you through step by step, versus just, like, nope, like, we're slapping some, like
Betadine on you?
Betadine, they're going to cut it open as soon as they can, they're going to reach in there, get the baby out, and you know, like, they don't cry right away, and if they've been through, if it's a fast C-section, and I guess I don't know for other C-sections, but, like, babies sometimes are in shock when they come out that way, because, like, it's such a different thing. So they don't cry right away. So, like, you also have that, like, moment where you're like, please cry, please be okay, please be okay. And they asked you if you wanted to see, right?
What, over the wall?
Because weren't they, like, holding up the baby, and they were trying to see, like, you want to see, and you thought they were trying to show you all my insides or something?
And I'm like, nope, I got one job, and that's right here.
I'm just going to pay attention to my wife.
Yep.
Well, but then they took her over with, like, the NICU staff over to the warming station, and, like,
Yes.
like, she cried fairly soon after that, and, like,
Then they-
had a pretty good APGAR score, and, like, was okay.
Yep. So they had me come over to the baby, like,
Yeah, and then you brought the baby over to me.
yeah. They left the cord a little long, so I got to cut the cord.
Aw, I didn't know that, actually. That's nice.
Hi, Mom.
We had an exciting day.
Yeah.
Long story short, we'll tell the long part later. There was an emergency C-section. The baby's okay. Am I okay? Look, Dean's okay too.
Hi. Yes.
It was an adventure, but we're okay.
Yep.
probably can't see her really well, but she's perfect. Look at the sweet little girl there. We had a big day, didn't we, sweetheart? Yeah. I know. Oh, I love you, baby.
Yeah.
Dan was so good in the C-section. They were able to pull him in so he could be next to me, and he was just so sweet.
You were the star of the show, honey.
Oh,
You and this little one.
this little one called the shots. There was, look at that.
Oh, she's sleeping.
Yeah. Oh.
Getting born is hard work.
Yeah. We'll try to take more video later, but we're okay. Everything's okay.
Okay.
She's perfect.
I love you.
I love you. So obviously, like, they took me to the PACU, and then we went up to...
Sorry, you skipped a step. Who did we have in the delivery room that we asked for? Neonatology.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that important part. Sorry.
We've slept, I swear.
They did check for a cleft. She does not have a cleft,
Right.
does not have Pirovan, but does have a very little chin. And so, like, to the point where there were several times where I was kind of like, are we sure? Like, I get there's no cleft.
Mm-hmm.
And then jumping ahead a little bit, like, obviously we went through PACU, went up to our room, and, you know, you have, like, lactation people come in. One of the lactation people said that, like, they thought she had, like, a higher arch. And so immediately I was like, well, maybe it is PRS, like a really mild form of Pirovan, because sometimes you can have a PRS diagnosis if you have a high arch and a small chin. But she seemed to be nursing okay. It was a little painful, so we, from another lactation person, found out that there was some tongue and lip tie, and Mabel had that, so that was expected. Mm-hmm. At what point, it was the 24-hour infant screen, right, where we started seeing some other issues. So once the lactation person said that they noticed a high arch, we asked them to just check, like, do, like, not a sleep study, but just to, like, watch her heart rate and her breathing, her oxygen levels, because I was like, I want to make sure that we don't miss something, basically, that we don't get her home and then have breathing issues, because that just sounds very scary to me. So they didn't want to do it ahead of time, but we're like, okay, we'll monitor this at the infant screening, which happens at 24 hours. And so she went to the nursery for that and then did not pass the test. And it was the O2 levels, right, that kept dropping. Yeah. So it was a very weird mix of, like, this new experience, but also the knowledge of my experience with Ava, mm-hmm. like, to a point where I think at some points it worked against us a little bit, because I was likening the experience too much, because I was like, are you sure she doesn't have it? So there are some things that helped. So when she had to stay the night in the nursery and I had to pump, I was familiar. Mm-hmm. I knew how to exclusively pump. And
you even brought your own equipment.
Except for, you know what I did? I forgot my pumping bra. So thankfully, our neighbor and the babysitter worked together to bring me a pumping bra to make it easier, because she stayed in the nursery for almost a day. Yeah. And then got moved to NICU because there was still these weird O2 readings. And when she was in the nursery, it wasn't bad because we could go visit her. They had us do one at a time, but it was just trading off, and it wasn't that bad. And it was weird because, like, I watched the O2 levels dropping, and so then I tried all my tricks that had worked with Ava, and sometimes my confirmation bias, right? Like, sometimes I would think that the positioning was working, and then I was like, oh, no, I know what this is. Like, I know how to fix this, right? Like, we've done this. I know what to do. And then there was enough times where it didn't work, and it didn't fix it. And then it was, like, scary because you didn't know why the O2, it was something new. And I feel like some of the nurses there were, like, humoring me a little bit, where I was like, no, look, like, if I put her in this position, like, it's better. And they're like, yeah, okay, kind of. And, like, they weren't rude about it at all. But, like, I had to go through that process in order to kind of figure it out for myself, too. For example, like, Ava with the Puro band, the fussy baby hold where she's kind of face down on your arm, worked really well. Rose hated it. The O2 levels just, like, tanked, and she was upset and, like, was not happy. So, like I said, the nursery visit was, like, not so bad. Like, we could take turns, get some rest and recovery time in the room. But then when she moved up to NICU, that's when the COVID stuff, I think, impacted us the most. So let's see if I can explain this in a way that makes sense. And I know this is kind of getting long, but I want to make sure to have the documentation for Rose when she's older. So with the COVID stuff, they wanted to limit the amount of visitors in NICU, which 100% makes sense to me. 100%. But what that meant is the restrictions on visitors for adults were, once I had the baby out of my body, I was an adult and therefore was not allowed visitors. When I was pregnant, I could have one support person, which was Dan. And what happened is once Rose was born, then Dan was technically Rose's visitor. And if we were all on the unit for the recovery unit, the couplet care, we were all together. It was no big deal. As soon as she went up to NICU, it got complicated because there was a risk that if Dan went to go be with the baby, he might not be able to come back to be with me and to support me, you know. And I just had major surgery. Like, yes, there was nurses. I think you'd figure it out if you had to, but having Dan in the room was so helpful and important that, like, we weren't willing to let Rose be by herself in NICU, but we also were, like, nervous about if he couldn't get back in. And it was one of those things where if everyone had followed the letter of the law, he would not have been allowed back. But it was like people kind of understood the situation, and, like...
You also... So I want to be careful because if what we're saying is things that technically should not have happened, we don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Yeah.
But it was made clear to me that if I didn't show my entire hand, but was clear in my communication about what I was trying to do to the people I needed to talk to, things would be okay. If I start blabbing, things might not be okay.
So basically, it worked out. Where the first day, Dan went with Rose and was able to be by her, and then the second day, I was able to go visit her, and that actually ended up being the day that she got released from NICU, so then there really wasn't any issues. And really, like, once we got home, it would have only been one of us at a time anyway, specifically me actually, because between the nursing and the lifting restrictions, I would not have been able to be by myself with the big girls at home. So, but it worked out. And do you want to explain why the O2 levels were dropping?
So I'm gonna have to look up the full name of the thing that they told us, but since I went with her initially, they put her in for a number of scans right away. Like the on-floor physician took a look at her and said, okay, I want to do an echocardiogram on her heart. We also would like to do a sonogram of her head and make sure, because there's the soft spot in the skull, we can actually see inside and look at the structure of the brain and make sure that structurally
Yeah, so-
looks okay.
But her brain is fine.
Yes. Yeah, so spoiler alert. And they also did a scan of her spine.
They did a lot of just
yeah, like
checking it out.
a lot.
So what was
So after many hours of
testing?
testing, waiting, and then the on-floor physician came over and said, okay, I talked with the cardiologist and we took a look at the test results. Here's what we think is going on. We think your daughter has a heart defect called a PFO, and that's the part I can't remember what it stands for.
I can put it on
Yeah.
the screen.
Read here.
Okay.
But this is one of the heart defects that normally closes up before the child is even born, and it's not really even a defect, it's a feature. Like, this is engineering talking. It's not a defect, it's a feature.
So when they're in utero, it is beneficial to have this opening.
Essential, actually.
Essential, because what keeps the red and the blue blood separate in the different chambers. Or
It mixes. So normally your heart mixes the lungs blood into the bloodstream through the different heart chambers. So you have this unoxygenated blood that goes to the lungs, gets oxygenated, comes back and gets pumped through the rest of the body. Well, your lungs don't work in utero, so the heart is set up in utero with this sort of bypass valve system set in place. So it gets the blood from the umbilical cord, pumps that through the baby and back out. But then once the baby is getting ready to be born and the lungs are going to start working, and then once they're out, that blood flow changes and the valve that was open closes and stays closed.
should close.
Yes. In our case, with the PFO, it didn't close all the way. There was a mixture of unoxygenated and oxygenated blood passing through the rest of her bloodstream because that valve had not closed all the way, but it was getting better. Hour by hour, day by day, it was improving to the point where after just one day, and you were there for the second day, she was
It was basically closed and she was fine.
Yeah, so
And we had a follow-up with the cardiologist last week. Everything's still looking fine. They'll have us come back when she's 8 to 9 months old, do another EKG just to double, triple check, but otherwise it's okay. So basically, we magically, even though we weren't sure this would happen, were able to come home both at the same time after 5 days in the hospital. With her looking good, me in recovery, but pretty much she gave us a little bit of everything. I got to do, 20 hours of labor, plus an emergency C-section, plus a night in the nursery, plus a night in NICU, and she had a tongue and lip tie, so we got to have that lasered and then go see, we still see a chiropractor for that. We still are doing tongue and lip exercises to make sure there's no scarring buildup. And we have been doing that every 4 to 6 hours on top of feeding every 3 hours. So it was like a little bit of the Ava experience mixed with a little bit of the Mabel experience, and then heightened because we added a C-section and some extra labor time.
And all in the context of a pandemic.
Oh yeah, did I tell you? There's a pandemic going on. So that's the short version. But yeah, we wanted to kind of try to tell some of the details before we forgot. I know this vlog is going to be pretty long.
I do want to observe too that through all of these things, we've been, I think, pretty lucky and blessed in the fact that the place that we went to, the personnel that are working there, and then even after we got out of hospital,
the support system we've had.
Right, the doctors, the other professionals that we've been recommended to, worked with before, and that all seem to kind of work well together. They trust each other, they communicate well. All of those things have been so beneficial, and we're just really grateful.
So basically, the whole thing could have been a big poop storm. I don't want to curse because I usually don't curse here. The whole thing could have been a big old poop storm, and we just continue to be very lucky that it was a lot of best case scenarios in a bad scenario. The fact that the heart rate started dropping for when we were in the middle of a nurse shift change, the fact that my epidural was already in and they had already administered the medicine so that Dan was able to be at the C-section. The fact that we were in the hospital when they noticed the O2 levels dropping to make sure that she was safe. Like, there's so many just blessings within a really hard situation. And like, I will say, like, I sometimes get compliments just via the vlog about, like, how well I seem to be handling things. I don't think I've ever had so many compliments in real time. About, like, oh, you're doing so good, you're staying so calm. Like, during the C-section, or after the C-section, the anesthesiologist was like, you did so good. Like, when people are panicked in that scenario, it makes it a lot harder to safely do everything, and like, you were just so brave, and like a little tears, but that's okay. And I was like, you know, I'm like weeping. Oh, thank you. You know, and I felt like that whole time, I just felt like I needed to be saying thank you to everyone all the time. I felt so well cared for. So I don't know if this will ever get back to them, but again, thank you. We have a beautiful baby, safe at home. I am safe. Like, we are. What? That was we
forgot something.
Oh, again?
Yep.
Okay, then maybe we should wrap it up after this.
Okay. What is the thing that we forgot?
Oh, the ear tag?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't even planning on mentioning it.
Well, we don't
but you were so excited.
Because I'm like, oh, important detail.
It's just a weird, random thing. So,
you can cut this part if you want.
Well, it doesn't matter. So, Rose was born with a little skin tag outside her ear. I'll see if I can find one of the newborn photos I took, and so you can see what I'm talking about. But it's benign. It's just a little oddball, and it is on her face to the point where, like, we can't just cut it off in office because it's by, like, some facial nerves. So Rose will need a very short surgery with our plastic surgeon. So we're going to Ava's plastic surgeon. We have one of those. We love her. So, and we were like, oh, hey. But sometimes having a skin tag there indicates other issues like kidney issues or hearing issues. So, like, some of the tests they were doing in the hospital were also to rule out that kind of stuff. So it was like at every turn, it was like, hey, there might be this bad thing. You're okay.
Just kidding.
Like, you're cool. Yeah. You're like, okay. A deep breath. Okay. Also, there's a pandemic. So, Anyway, yeah, it's just a cosmetic thing. So we are hoping to get it like removed in the next couple months, but we'll kind of see how the COVID numbers are doing.
So he mentioned there's a pandemic.
Hey. Anyway, yeah, but that it's just an oddball thing that then required more tests and so as far as like the PRS stuff goes, like it's just been a really interesting journey with each of the kids, and because all of the experiences were so different. But yeah, she does not have that, and after we get the skin tag removed, I think Rose is out of the woods for most medical stuff. So that's good. That's where we're at. So this was really long. If you have stayed to the end, like, thank you. Like, thanks for watching, and we will be back soon. Like, I think it depends on how much time I have. I have some old footage that, like, I would love to, when he's on paternity leave, maybe edit and do some throwback videos. Since I have them, I've just never had time. So, do you like my little head? I was like, oh my God, we've been talking too much.
We've been together a long time.
It's our anniversary today.
Happy anniversary!
Happy anniversary. 8 years, man. All right. Rosie's sleeping. We're going to turn the air conditioning back on. It's really warm. And we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.